Okay, let me just start off by saying, boom, we are at the sleek and flawless mold. This is wow, what can I say? We have basically gone through the course, and now you get to basically reap the benefits of the fruits, or however the saying goes. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway. So, welcome back and thank you so much for joining. And today we are going to be going over the mold. So, let's get into this pivotal lesson of the course. I am so excited. So, let's go ahead and get to it. Now, before we do, I just want to quickly recap, of course, and that is base structure step number 4 is the step that we never skip. Prep is short for preparing, and depending on texture, fullness, and style of the ponytail request determines how we're going to prep the hair. So next, I want to get into these mold commandments, and there are only 3. So you guys should be able to memorize them and make sure that you follow them. Commandment number 1, don't skip. This is a part of base structure which ensures consistency. So make sure that you're not skipping past any of these steps, because everything from the shampoo up until now totally matters and is going to determine the outcome of our ponytail. Number 2, prep. Prep the hair before you even begin molding. So don't skip the prep. And then the last commandment is control. So the mold is all about control of the hair, the tools you're using, which are your combs, and the products that you are also going to be using for this step. So we want to make sure that we have everything on our station that we're going to need. So that's going to be your combs, your rubber bands, your paper wraps. Everything that's needed for this step, we want to make sure that it's readily available, because we want to have control from beginning to end. So let's go ahead and watch the demo video. Now, I want you guys to watch this video at least 2 to 3 times before trying this step. However, I do know that it's exciting. So if you don't, just make sure that you try it on a doll head before you try it on a live model. The mold. So as you guys saw in the previous video, I sectioned off the top portion, which is going to be the overlay for the middle part of the ponytail. The next thing that I've done is I've sectioned out the baby hair, because I want to make sure that I'm not molding that and then trying to pull that out later. That's going to disturb the ponytail mold, and it can be a little uncomfortable for your clients. At this point, what I'm doing is I'm just simply combing the hair the way that I want it to go, and I'm beginning the molding process. Now you can see in the video that the hair is very sleek, it's very shiny, and it pretty much looks like it's halfway there, and we are. So once I get it into the rough draft ponytail, and I call it the rough draft because of course we're going to continue to clean it up while we're doing the hairspray and drying it with the dryer. So I'm just putting the rubber band on, and I always make sure that I stroke the hair at least a couple of times, just to make sure that I have all the hair in the palm of my hand and that it's as smooth as I can get it. And then I wrap the rubber band around, and I want to wrap it around. I don't want to wrap it around too tight, but I do want it to be somewhat snug, because I want to be able to mold the hair down and not have to worry about the rubber band sliding out of the hair. So the first thing that I put on the hair was a shine mist that I use, not a shine spray. There's a difference. Shine spray actually comes out of the pump, like how hairspray comes out, and that would be too much. This one is actually an aerosol type of shine spray, so it comes out more of a mist. So I put a coat of that on top of the hair, and then I'm going to smooth out the ponytail once again, because as you saw while I was combing it, it got kind of a little rough around the base of the ponytail. So I want to smooth that part out as much as possible. Now, the reason why we want to do that is because if we let that area stay bunched up and lumpy and rough, once you start putting the hairspray, it's going to get kind of hard in that area. And then when you go to smooth it out, it'll make it a little more complicated for you to comb it out. So now I'm using my Van Gogh spritz, which I'm so excited about. And that's a spritz that I came out with because while I've been doing hair, I've been doing hair for about 16 years, I was finding that a lot of the hairsprays that I was using, that they were either too firm, too much of a firm hold, or they were too light. And then also too, some of them would give me like a white flaky type of residue on the hair. So my hairspray, my spritz that I came out with, the Von Gogh, it's very pliable and it adds a sheen and a luster to the hair. Now you can spray too much, and that's with any hairspray, and it can get a little, I don't necessarily want to say like unruly, but the hair can get harder than what you would like during this process. So just make sure that you're only spraying a few times, and then I'm running my hand over to make sure that the hairspray is drying. Because even though hairspray does not have a lot of water in it, it's still something that's wet, and we straighten the hair, so we don't want it to revert back. So we just want to make sure that that whatever part it is that we're spraying, that we're thoroughly drying it. Another point that I want to mention is I'm not going to spray past the palm of my hand. So my hands are not that large, so I'm only going to spray just the area that the palm of my hand can cover. I'm not going to spray past that point, because then I won't be able to control drying that. So I'm only going to be spraying the area that the palm of my hand can cover. Again, my hand is being used as a temperature gauge, and also to let me know if that section is dry. Now you can see the part over the ear, I'm kind of not really involving that at this step of the mold. And that's because I just want to make sure that it goes behind the ears smoothly, and that it doesn't end up getting lumpy. And so I pretty much save that for the last. I just put a little bit more pomade on my baby hair because I want to move that out of the way. I don't want to add that into the mold. So again, I'm taking my Von Gogh spritz, and now I'm going to start molding down the section that's over the ear. So what we're doing is we're actually building up the mold. We're not spraying the area and getting it so hard to the point where when we want to move the hair around or start to comb the hair back into the rubber band, that it's so hard that it's flaking and turning white, or that it is painful to the client. So now I'm starting to mold again, working my way back. And of course, I have my hand on top of her hair, and that's letting me know where I can spray, where the palm of my hand is going to cover. And again, I'm using the dryer to dry that area. And it's also my temperature gauge, so I'm not going to get the hair too hot, and I'm not going to get her ear too hot with the blow dryer. Now with the tip of your rat tail comb, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I have not used my metal tip rat tail comb since I did the parting. I only use that comb just to part the hair out. I don't use it for the mold. I use a plastic rat tail comb for the molding segment, and that's because the teeth are closer together. And so it gives me more of a smoothing effect than the rat tail comb that I have with the metal tip. That one, the teeth are a little bit wider. So now I'm doing the back portion of the hair, and again I'm spraying my spritz, and then I'm adding a little bit of shine spray, and that's because I want to make sure that the hair is not going to get flaky, and that the hairspray is not going to get too hard to the point where I'm not able to continue to clean up the mold near the base of the ponytail. So as you can see, it's pretty smooth. The only thing that needs to be cleaned up, of course, is going to be the base, which is around the ponytail area. I mean, the rubber band area. Now, this second hairspray that you see me using is going to be my Firm Hold aerosol spray. So for those of you who did purchase my how-to book, How to Master the Infinity Ponytail Style, there was a breakdown list of all the products that I use in order to create the perfect ponytail. So this is going to be my firm holding aerosol spray. So depending on the client's hair texture, it just really depends on my technique of how I'm going to add the spray. This particular client that I have, she pretty much has a typical head of hair. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. As far as the length is concerned, it's about a medium length, and her texture is somewhat curly. It does require pressing or flat ironing to silk out, but she doesn't have like overly curly hair or like a very full thick head of hair. So this is going to be the way that I generally mold all of my clients. Once you start getting into those textures like fine or a very coarse thick hair, those particular textures, it's going to be on a client basis or the hair type basis. So you're just going to be working with your sprays, and while you're molding it down, you're going to be determining at that point like what's working best. So if you find that, let's say, the Van Gogh spritz is not molding the hair down well on overly coarse hair, like really thick hair, then you want to go ahead and go a step up and go to your aerosol spritz, or go to the firm hold aerosol, just so that, basically you've gone through all of the other products so you know what's not going to work. So at this point, I'm done with the mold. So you can see that it's very smooth. And now we are adding in the sections that we took out for the middle part. And so I'm just sectioning off the rest of the hair that I'm going to mold as far as her baby hair is concerned. So I just want to make sure that I get that out of the way prior to, because I don't want to have to pull it out once I've done my molding. And I add a little bit more pomade. I'm not putting a whole lot. I'm just putting enough so that when I comb it out of the way, it'll stay, comb forward. So now I'm just smoothing out that section because I don't want to have to comb it out as I'm molding it. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my firm holding hairspray and I'm going to spray on the part that I've already molded, and then I'm going to spray on the part of the hair that I'm adding. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because think of like a sandwich. If you put two dry pieces of bread together, they're not going to stick together. But if you put, mustard or mayonnaise or something, on it, those two pieces of bread are going to stick together. And so that's why I use that trick of spraying some of the hairspray in between. So that way, once I start to mold it, they're kind of already sticking together. The hair is not raising up. So again, I'm adding my spritz and adding shine spray. And then I'm going to use the palm of my hand and the comb, and I'm just going to continue to direct the hair in the direction that I'm going to be molding. And again, I'm not trying to mold down that whole section in one shebang. I'm going to do it in segments so that it's smooth and to make sure that I have control. Now, I usually put my hand up to block the hairspray, like from going into the client's face or from going on to the other side, because I've already molded that. So I don't want to have that part just completely covered and saturated in spray. So that's why I use my hand kind of like as a shield as I'm spraying more spritz. Again, just using my hand to rub down on the area for heat control and also to make sure that that part of the hair is dry. So there I have my hand up again, just making sure that I'm not getting any of the spritz spraying directly into my client's face. And then now I'm going to smooth this area down. And even if you're, like, as you can see while I'm combing, some of the baby hair is going into that parting, that's fine. You can just make sure that you just part that section out and comb it out of the way. If that happens, you don't have to stop and redo it or take it down or anything like that. You're just going to make sure that you just comb it out of the way. And then I'm using my other hand to just apply pressure to the hair so that I didn't just spray it and now it's just kind of just free. I was still applying pressure with the palm of my hand to continue to help it to mold in place before I was using the blow dryer. So again, the part that's directly over the ear, I'm going to make sure that I mold that section separately because I don't want to have it to where it starts to bunch up or I start to disturb the rest of the mold. So I make sure to dry it just above the ear. And then again, I'm going to take my rat tail comb and then I'm just going to guide the hair to go, over and behind the ear. See? So the hair went over and behind the ear and it's smooth. So I don't need to go back and respray that part or remold that part. So now I'm just adding in the rest of the hair, which is, going towards the ends. Now, this is why I say you need to silk the hair out from the roots to the ends, because if you're only pressing just the roots or just silking out the roots and you're not making sure that it's silked out all the way down to the ends, this area that I'm molding down right now, it wouldn't be that smooth. There would be a little bit of wave to it, or you'd be able to tell like that section is not as smooth as the top. So again, I'm just using the palm of my hand to measure the heat and to make sure that that section is dry. And that's all going to be the length of time of how long it's going to take for you to dry an area that you spray is going to be based on how much hairspray you put and how hot your blow dryer gets. So I'll usually do maybe like 3 or 4 pumps of hairspray, and then my blow dryer does get hot, so it doesn't take me that long to dry a section. So this is the final thing that I'm doing to make sure that the ponytail looks seamless since we added that part in separately. So I just make sure that I comb it in the direction with the rest of the hair that's molded to ensure that it's going to be a seamless ponytail, even though we did the little trick of parting that section out. And then I'm just going to take 2 small black rubber bands and then I'm going to rubber band that section off. The previous section I already rubber band when I molded that section down. So there's already 2 rubber bands on there. So now I'm just going to add this section. And I don't do these rubber bands extremely tight. I usually just wrap them around maybe 2 or 3 times, just enough to hold the hair into place. And then I want to get it as close to the base as possible. And then lastly, I'll just make sure that I go around and dry any areas that may still feel damp. And then if there's any flyaways, I'll spray that a little bit too, just to kind of smooth those areas out as well. Because next is going to be the baby hair, and then we're going to wrap this puppy up, and then we'll be going into the adding of the bundles and the bonus of my demonstration on how I put in wand curls. So I'm just only going to show you 2 of what my clients like to call the swoopies. So remember, I've already put pomade on this hair to get it out of the way. So I don't have to add any more products other than hairspray. So all I'm going to do is just start moving the hair in the direction that I want it to go for the mold. And then I'm going to take my firm hold hairspray, and that's the one that I'm going to use in order to spray and dry and mold these baby hairs into place. Now, the tails of the baby hairs, I'm going to save those for the end when I add them in. I don't add them in individually because that would create a lot of product buildup. So you'll see once I'm done with the very last swoop, what I'm going to do with the tails that are left over. That's if you have a client that has really long baby hair. Of course, if their baby hair is short, you won't have to do that step. So I'm just using my finger, making sure that it's not getting too hot and making sure that it's dry. So now you see the tails that I was talking about. So you see those 3 tails that are kind of like blowing backwards a little bit. So those we're going to add in one shot. We're not going to add those each individually. Like I said before, it would just cause it would just have too much hairspray on the front, and it probably would end up looking a little crusty after a while. So I'm just going to do the last one. And that's because she didn't, at first she wanted to have some sideburns, and then she changed her mind. So usually, like, if you have a client that says like, oh, I want to have a lot of baby hair, or I want to have a lot of sideburns, and then once you turn them around to the mirror and they're like, oh, okay, I don't think I want to leave that much sideburn out, you can always add those in the same way that you're seeing me do this one. So I just use the tip of the comb just to make sure that it's going smoothly behind the ear. And then now I'm going to add in all the tails. So what I'm doing is I'm just gently combing them down so that they blend into the mold. And then I'm going to spray them with some spray. So you can see they pretty much disappear. I'm going to spray them with some more of the firm hold. And then I'm going to dry them just to make sure that they blend in with the rest of the ponytail. And I'm going to make sure that they're completely dry. And then the very last portion of it, I just simply put behind the ear like how I showed you before. And then I'm going to put a little bit more hairspray and then mold that in with the rest. Because it's not going to reach the rubber band. The hair is not that long. Now, I wouldn't suggest you parting out hair that's long enough to make it all the way to the back of the ponytail to use as baby hair. That's just kind of too long. So if you have a client that really doesn't have baby hair, really your only two options are to just do a ponytail either without baby hair or perhaps cut them a little bit, because once the hair gets too long, it becomes a challenge to mold it and to get it to where it stays into place, I should say. So now I'm doing my wrap strips, and I put 2 pieces behind the ears, and that's because I don't want the ears to leave an indentation. So I just take a small piece of the wrap strip and I cut it, and then I fold it in half and place it behind the ears. So now I'm using the full wrap strip and I'm tying the hair down. So this is going to continue to help the mold. And if any area of the ponytail was not 100% dry, then this is going to help it to dry and mold into place. So now that I've totally wrapped the hair, the ends of the papers, I'm going to make sure that I save them for the next step, which is adding the bundles. Remember, I told you guys that I was going to show you a little trick of using just a little bit of glue to add in bundles. So that concludes the molding portion of the service. So let's go ahead and finish up. Just to quickly recap, for the mold, we want to make sure that we get control of the hair off top. So if the hair is all over the head or just thrown into a ponytail, you are going to have some serious work ahead. So we want to make sure that we get the hair into a rough draft ponytail. And then which leads me to the next thing, which is we're going to be sectioning off. So again, if they're wearing a part down the middle, we're going to be sectioning off on both sides of the part at least an inch thick of hair, so that we can add that towards the end, because that's going to give us constant control over the ponytail. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're watching our client. So watch your client's head, and its position is going to dictate where your ponytail is going to fall. So I have a really funny story about that. I had a client that wanted to get one of those really high I Dream of Jeannie ponytails, kind of like the one that's in the photo on this slide. And she wanted it to be like dead in the middle, like I Dream of Jeannie, right? So anyway, it was on a Saturday. It was like towards the end of the day. You know, Saturday is a stylist Friday. And I was kind of tired, and I think she was too. I think she had just gotten off of work. And so she kept kind of like dozing off a little bit. And so I guess at some point when I was molding her hair, she had kind of like leaned her head a little bit to the side. So by the time I was done and I was putting the hair on there, I was like, oh, okay, so we got a little tilted I Dream of Jeannie ponytail. This one isn't going straight up, which of course she was a good sport about it, and so was I. It's a client whose hair I've been doing for a long time. But just a word to the wise, I just learned after that incident, I just make sure to check and see how my client is holding their head, because I want to make sure that the ponytail is going to fall exactly how they want it to look. So for our action steps in this module, I want you to evaluate, do you apply any product to the hair before molding other than hairspray, like how I told you about the Shine Mist Spray? So if the answer is yes, do they revert the hair or do they add too much oil to the hair? After evaluating them, determine if you need to continue to use them. So maybe you should find a Shine Mist versus using a Shine Spray on this particular segment. And then also, lastly, you're just going to make sure that you practice. And we're going to go ahead and get into the last step next, which is going to be adding the bundles and the wraparound.